It's really hard for us to focus on the future. It's really hard to take action because, yes, it feels like we don't really have a future. At least not a particularly bright one, no? Either way, if we keep withdrawing our energy and focus and dedication from the future, that will become part of the reason of our futurelessness. Hello, my name is Natalie. I created the bullet when I was in a dark place. It is a philosophical podcast that talks about human integrity and freedom. Coming from a dark place, I am not asking why the world is as it is, so as to make sense of it. I find the society we live in very questionable. I do not like how the modern Western worldview is considered synonymous with objective truth. So when I ask why the world is as it is, I am asking so as to undermine the foundations of a world that, in my opinion, needs to be unsettled and rethought. A short note on the topic of wallowing in things that cannot be changed. In my podcast episodes, I often talk about shame and all things, feelings, dynamics, problems related to it. And that is because I believe shame to be one of the main tools of oppression and one of the most efficient ways to induce a sense of powerlessness in a human being. So when talking about human integrity and freedom, it makes sense to talk about their absolute antidote. I feel that in the past few months, with all things going on in the world right now, humanity has seen and shown both extremes. We have felt incredibly powerless towards situations that seem to be coming out of nowhere and too complex to be understood, let alone handled or solved. We have witnessed and felt the workings of oppression. And yet we have also experienced our integrity. We felt the pain of having it hurt. We felt the empowerment that comes with taking it back. We felt compelled to reflect and talk and care about our values and about our ideas of freedom. And it feels that the opposition of the two, the feeling of powerlessness on the one side and the yearning for freedom on the other side, has reached a boiling point where we can no longer ignore the fact that change is needed. And that change will come. I think either in the form of a wave that will carry us to new shores if we let it, or potentially in the form of a bulldozer that will squash everything and everyone trying to hold on to the status quo with, well, a rather bulldozing sensation. What we are already experiencing is that in the process of this boiling, all things that tie us to the dying status quo are brought to the surface, where we need to deal with them. And considering that the status quo most likely maintained its status by means of oppression, this means that we're dealing with a lot of shame. Now, dealing with shame is tricky. There are situations, plenty to be honest, where shame is merely used to make people shut up, to stir emotions, to stigmatize, so in short, to give someone a final blow in a game of power. So where shame is not even about a sense of righteousness or accountability, but just about disabling whomever one might perceive as a threat. And I'm not even saying that this is innately good or bad. It just is what it is, a power move. And power struggles are tricky and difficult for obvious reasons. But then there are also situations where shame is about a sense of righteousness and accountability, where it's necessary to call out an abusive situation, to right a wrong, if you will. And we do see situations like that also a lot at the moment. And part of letting go of the status quo, and hopefully not getting bulldozed, will be, in my opinion, to resolve these in a constructive way. Unfortunately, we as a society are so used to shame in the sense of that final blow, the first one I talked about, that there is almost no awareness, no habit, no culture around how to deal with shame in constructive ways. So what we see happening today more and more is the rising of a need for resolvement, are people calling out abusive situations and putting a lot of effort into trying to right the wrongs they perceive. But unfortunately, in many cases, these efforts are not answered through taken accountability and powerful, responsible actions, but by quite the opposite. Many of the people whose energy and spirit would be needed in order to bring about change respond by fighting back harshly or dropping dead altogether, and both because they think that they're under deadly attack. Because this is what we all have learned growing up in this society. When we feel shame, that must mean that we're about to get a final blow. Do you see how frustrating this is? If someone is to finally find the courage to raise their voice and speak up, to call out something that needs to be changed, to address the person whose action is needed in order to resolve the problem, and to then have them fight, or, which is even more demoralizing, see them collapse in front of them, drowning in their own tears of shame and self-pity. I find that it is becoming more and more obvious how dysfunctional we as a society are when it comes to shame and accountability and powerful, responsible action in the direction of change. And we have to change how we handle shame. We have to dismantle its oppressing forms in our modern society. And we need to find ways of feeling remorse in a way that doesn't just disable us and make us want to give up, but rather than that inspires and motivates us to make a change for the better. And I think that this is not exclusively, but also about shifting our focus from wallowing in the past, where things can't be changed, to indulging in fantasies and plans for the future that is still ahead of us and waiting for us to actively mold it. Now, obviously, this is a touchy subject. It is important to process and work through the past. It is important to remember and to learn from past mistakes. I'm not against that. However, the way to approach it is to use our examination of the past as a compass that can show us where and how to best invest our energies in the future and not in the past. Wallowing in the past and in things that cannot be changed or seem as though they can't be changed is one of the main symptoms of how shame puts us into a mind state of complete and utter powerlessness. We can see this on a global level in the rising of conservative and extreme right-wing movements. We can also experience this on a more personal level in the shape of increasing mental health issues, depression, blocks, burnout, or just the overall incapability of many people to resolve their past trauma. And I believe that it is also present in something as quote-unquote simple as the worsening phenomenon of procrastination. It's really hard for us to focus on the future. It's really hard to take action because, yes, it feels like we don't really have a future. At least not a particularly bright one, no? But I'm wondering, is our emotional and energetic withdrawal from the future the result of the sense of a futurelessness? Or is the potential upcoming end of the world, whatever that means, the result of us wallowing in the past and therefore maintaining the unbearable status quo? Either way, if we keep withdrawing our energy and focus and dedication from the future, that will become part of the reason of our futurelessness. So please, when you find yourself being confronted with shame, when you realize that you have done something wrong, that you have hurt someone or something, or that you have participated in a dynamic that is harmful in any way, try to not fight that feeling. And please do not shoot yourself on the leg for being such a failure either. I suggest that you stop focusing on yourself entirely. Stop focusing on the past and how you've made an irreversible mistake, and instead shift your focus towards the thing, person, or dynamic you've wronged. And look for ways of how you can make it right. Trust me, it will be much appreciated, and forgiveness and redemption even are so much easier if you become active in that way. Because no one benefits, not really, from you denying or wallowing in your shame. Both just perpetuate the problem that necessary change cannot occur, well, at least not for the better, if you resist it or invest your energy in the past. So get creative in righting wrongs. And if you don't know how to do that, if you don't know what to do at all, then ask the people you have wronged potentially how they're feeling, what they're needing, what they would want you to do. Take care of yourself and of others. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast and would like to support it, please check out my Patreon page. That is patreon.com/thebulletbynatalievent. There you can find all information you might be interested in. And also feel free to leave me a comment or any personal thoughts you might have. They're all appreciated. I hope that the struggles you might be facing right now will turn into a bullet that will touch what needs to be touched, shatter what needs to be reassembled afresh, and implant the seed of change where freedom is needed. And I hope that you'll have a good week.